The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. We also do that with our Crowbar Awards, which offers a new creative challenge or brief, if you will, and a new guest judge every 3 months. You can learn more about that and see who our latest guest judge and our latest brief. You can find that at www.crowbarawards.com. That's crowbarawards.com. And welcome back to ADjunct, the segment where we gather advice from the best advertising educators in the world to lend advice to your ear for free, bypassing the hefty costs of college. This week, we learn from Dr. Sean Sawicki. Sean is an incredible human who earned his Ph.D. in communications and now is an assistant professor of communications at the University of Tampa. He is the department lead for their advertising and PR program. And what I loved about speaking with Sean is that we learn that it's never too late to make a career pivot toward a path you truly love. Having spent years on the client marketing side, he knew his passion was in the classroom after having adjunct at a community college. So with his PhD combined with practical business experience, you are in for a real treat full of advice. You're going to want to connect with Sean. To do so, listen to the end of this episode, or hey, I'm starting something new here. If you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and message me, my name is Gino Schellenberger, on LinkedIn, I'll do my very best to schedule a conversation with him for you. And I'm going to try to do this every episode with every guest. If you leave a review and message me, listen to the whole episode, I will connect you personally. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Dr. Sean Sawicki, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. This is the adjunct edition. Although you kind of qualify for both regular breaking, entering, and adjunct, you got a great resume here. So I'm excited to talk with you. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing well. Recording this one in my apartment today. It was a nice, easy day. So decided to leave the office 30 minutes early. So feeling really good and excited for this. So Sean, what are we going to talk about today? Let's talk about your role here. I see that you run the advertising program. Right now, your LinkedIn says assistant professor of communication at the University of Tampa. Is that correct?
That's correct. So currently, I'm the director of the Advertising and Public Relations program here at the University of Tampa. We sit under the Department of Communication, which that program or that department sits under the College of Arts and Letters. So currently, we have about 350 majors in our program. We're the biggest program in the communication department.
So, okay, so arts and letters, you said
Yes.
at the top, and then there's department comms, communication,
Yes.
and then within that you got ad PR combined.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So, and you're running the ad PR program. How many students, I guess, maybe in that are enrolled in that specific sector within the school?
So we've got 350 students in the ad PR program. So we call it
Wow.
ad PR, so it's advertising public relations, but we just it's so long to say, so we just call ourselves ad PR.
Got it. So we'll break down your role. We'll break
Sure.
down because you got a unique background. Like I said before, you started off client side. You've been in advertising the industry before, and then you made the switch into academia. You went full force. You got that PhD. You are a doctor. So I think that if I was a student at University of Tampa, I would want you as a professor for sure. I'd be making sure that I had you in my classes. So let's talk about this. I think my first question to you is what classes are you teaching specifically when you're not running administration for the department?
So primarily, I teach in the advertising and public relations program. I teach principles of advertising. I teach our capstone campaigns course where we work with a real client throughout the course of the semester, building
Nice.
out a full campaign. And I like to do that kind of like Shark Tank style. So it's a class of about 20 students, and then we split out into groups. And then each group works on their part of a pitch for the campaign. And then at the end of the semester, they'll pitch it to the client. And then the client will pick which one they felt best speaks to them and their needs.
Yeah. So the big shot, I feel like somebody that has real, what I've noticed in this podcast when I'm interviewing academics, usually they like to have somebody with real experience teaching that capstone to run the show. Is that usually for that capstone class? Is that towards the end of their academic career, or can they take that anytime?
It's supposed to be the last class that they take
Yeah.
in the ADjunct program.
Send them off.
You should know everything. Yeah, you should know the principles. You should know a little bit of PR. You should know
Yeah.
how to do
Sean,
creative.
you know what I've always kind of thought about is, what if you had that as the first class? What if you just kickstarted and threw them in the fire right away? They don't know anything. They learn by design, and then maybe they do it again at the end. That's something I've always kind of thought about. Is like, it's a really great way to just throw them in the fire.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Well,
As we talk about it
right now, since I teach the principles class, and the principles class is really the first class that they take. It's kind of getting their
you're
foot.
doing the first and the last class.
Yeah,
so you
and
see them
so
grow.
yeah, and in the first class, I'll do what I do is a baby version of what we'll do in the capstone class. That way, they instead of doing it with the real client, they work with the fictional client. So they have to pick a national brand. They have to do most of what a campaign is. I don't go too in depth. They get like I'll say maybe 2/3. Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with spec work, fake work, if you want to call that. I mean, that goes into a portfolio. So just like my goal of this podcast, one of the big goals is to make sure that students don't have to go to a portfolio school after they graduate. When they figure out they want to be a creative and they have to go to higher education because they didn't have great work. So the fact that your students are getting that spec work first class, they should know that they have the opportunity, right, to put that in a portfolio, come back to it later, work on it in the summer, and hopefully mitigate the need to go to higher education.
Yeah, and I have to brag a little bit. So the faculty that I work with, we all have identified the need for portfolio aspects. And so in our classes, we each have some sort of a project that they can use as part of their portfolio. And then we're excited that this year is the first year we actually have a specific portfolio class that we're offering. And so students can take this class and start putting all their stuff together to build their own portfolio.
Nice. Tell me more about, okay, so well, actually, there's a lot of good questions. Well, are you doing a lot of research as well? You have that PhD now. So how do you balance the teaching side of things? Is there do you get pressure to publish is a question that I like to ask those PhD ranked professors.
Yeah, there certainly is. Well, if you're pursuing tenure, which I'm on tenure track, pretty much the golden ticket that anyone will tell you who's on some sort of a tenure track is publishing is really kind of like what you need to get there. Yeah. It has the most weight. I would say solid teaching evaluations, and then some service, and then really the publishing. So I think the three of those are
trifecta. Kind of yeah, the trifecta. So you said teaching, demonstrating that you're doing well in the classroom, which I have no doubt that you are. And then also give service, putting on events, like creating stuff for the school, getting the school noticed, committee work, I'm assuming, and then publishing. So that's really good to know. And so you're on tenure track, meaning you're not tenured yet. When do you go up for review on that?
I'm going up just around the corner in the 2027, 2028 academic year.
Well, this is publishing. This podcast is publishing, right? You're going to be featured on a national ad trade outlet. So add it to the list for this podcast.
Check. But yeah, back to your question though about balancing it. It really is about everybody has different suggestions, and so some people will say, I write 15 minutes every day, or somebody will say, "Oh, my goal is that Friday is my research day," or somebody says, "I'll do my researches over the summer, and that's when I don't teach." So everybody's different, and so I would never tell anybody one way is better, but to find when you work best. Like I am a night owl, so my ideas come to me at like 1 in the morning, and then I'll work for a little bit.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Well,
Hey,
8 a.m. sounds awful to me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to give your students who are listening for extra credit right now, I'm assuming. Um, just some background on like what you're going through, right? And that it is a really tough job to balance out those three key areas, not including all the other stuff, the other expectations and smaller tasks that you have to do. And I'm assuming you have a family and a life outside of work too. So
Right.
just giving that context to everybody is super, super important. So I'm glad that we can cover that. Anything that you're recently publishing that you can share that you're super proud of, anything that we can look up, or is it all TBA?
Right now I have just some older stuff that's flown around on Google Scholar, some stuff that I'd worked on during PhD life. Right now I'm in flux or in the process of kind of slicing up my dissertation. So my dissertation focused on looking at cultural perceptions of different forms of humor. And so I'm just a goofy guy in general.
Mhm.
So I've always had a passion for humor. And one thing that I kept trying to understand was something might be funny to me, but it's not funny to somebody else. And why is that? And so is there some cultural barrier? And so some of the things I found was like wordplay, for instance. You'd have to have a solid grasp on the language to really get that pun. And so somebody who doesn't have a full grasp of the language won't understand those nuances. So that effort would be lost in advertising there.
Oh, I find that very interesting. So you did that at Florida State University, is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Shout out to my amazing advisor, Dr. Cindy Chapa, and my other amazing committee members, Dr. Wendorf Muhammad, Dr. McDowell, Dr. Edwards, all amazing people.
Amazing. Thanks for giving them a shot. Thanks for developing a great academic here. So you did that. That takes some time, 2017 to
Yes.
2022, right?
Yeah. So I was working at University of Tampa under a visiting contract. And so I was doing that while I was trying to juggle the doctoral dissertation.
A lot on your plate, but you really dove. We'll get in the background more about the undergraduate program at University of Tampa. So beautiful school, private institution. Is that correct?
Yes, we're a private nonprofit, and so one of the things that's unique about UT is that we're a school in an urban area, which is kind of, I think it's awesome that it's not in a college town that's 90 miles from anything. So the students love that they're able to come to a good school, and they can jump on an airplane back home. We had a lot of students from the Northeast.
Yeah.
And we're around 11,000 students, which is a pretty mid-sized student body. So we're not too small, but we're not too big.
And there's pros and cons, right? Of being, I was at one of those campus town, middle of nowhere. There's the bubble. What's that?
So was I.
Which one was you? Let me see here.
Florida State. Yeah.
Okay. So that was for your doctorate.
Yes.
And then undergrad, you were at Florida Atlantic.
Yes.
What's the scene like at Florida Atlantic?
Florida Atlantic. So when I was wrapping up my time at Florida Atlantic, they were trying to push away from being considered a commuter school, and they had just opened up the football stadium. They had done a couple of other things. So it's right now it's a different place where it's just like they're putting a lot of money into athletics and building up the academic programs. And I think one of their big selling points is that they're like 3 miles from the beach.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
it's a good selling point. But yeah, I was saying there's pros and cons of being in that bubble. One of the pros of being in a cityscape, urbanscape, is that you can get internships, find jobs, be in the hustle and bustle of that community, and therefore you can find internships, summer opportunities if those are available easier. You can go on a train, bus, Uber, whatever it may be, drive over there and go to those networking events direct to that city. And I think, there is somebody in our network that is doing a segment on advertising cities that are outside of the big three, New York, Chicago, LA. And I think Tampa is on his list. It's called Ad Atlas. So I recommend listeners check that out to see if Tampa is on that list. If not, I'll make sure he taps it to find those agencies, right? So,
Yeah, that's great.
so definitely can find opportunities in that city. So I love it.
Yeah, we do have somebody who is in our communication department who's dedicated to focusing on student internships. So we have Dr. Christopher Holden. That's his one of his focuses is lining up students with internships.
Nice.
So we have access to a lot of folks
I would
in
stick
the
to that
Tampa
person like
area.
glue.
Yeah, he's great.
Definitely want to be friends with that doctor, for sure, as well as yourself. I'm sure you have a lot of great connections with the students that are coming out, getting jobs, sticking around, or wherever they might go in different cities. So yeah, so you got this great undergraduate program, 300 people. That's a lot of people um, that are studying advertising. Is the major advertising and PR? Do they minor in PR? Can they minor in advertising? What does that actual piece of paper look like when they leave?
Sure, I'll break it down for you. So the degree itself is advertising and public relations. And so students can pick one of three routes that they're interested in. So we have a general route that most students will pick. They'll pick it's just general advertising and public relations general concentration. So if they love both worlds and they want to be proficient in both, then that's the route that they choose. And I'd say the lion's share of our students will go that route. The other options are whether they want to go the advertising creative direction. And so they still have to take a lot of the public relations courses. They just have to take a couple extra creative classes instead of some of the PR electives. And then we have on the other end, we have public relations focus.
Hmm.
But the
So you got
degree will still say advertising and public relations.
so you got three tracks: general track, advertising, creative track, and the third one was PR.
Yep.
Love it. And which one do you so you sit in the advertising track, the creative track, or more
I
general
just
track?
sit, I still sit and I teach in all of them really. It's
Yeah.
not there's no like dedicated courses to them. They just have to take a couple extra classes in one
Right.
direction or another, depending on
And
like if
that
you're taking
the portfolio development class, I'm assuming, is in that creative, advertising creative
that one we
track.
have right now is an elective. We're looking at making it a required course just for the students to have that benefit for it. Right now we're just piloting it as an elective because this is our first year having it.
I'm a
But
huge fan of when there are recommended routes, because
yeah,
my belief is students should know exactly or close to exact role that they want out of college. So the
yeah,
fact that you're making them make decisions, throughout their college career, I'm sure they can flow in and out perhaps and take some different classes, but they should. Every person listening that's an aspiring advertiser should know exactly what route they want to go, what job they want to land when they get out of college. Because when you get out and you're talking to a recruiter and like, I'm not really sure. They're not going to
right.
hire you. They're not going to. They want somebody that's sure and has proof behind it. So I think that's phenomenal. I love when schools kind of recommend a route of some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I think for instance, the students in the general track they can pick which way they want to go for their capstone class. But if you are an advertising creative, then you would have to take the advertising campaigns capstone course. Or if you're a PR focused person, then you have to take the public relations capstone course. So
Oh,
there's a little
nice,
bit of direction that way too.
nice. So you got capstones for each one, and that's phenomenal too.
Yes. Although the ones that take the PR class, I don't know if they lose out or they're spared from my terrible dad jokes.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. I mean, maybe. You studied humor, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you're effective now. Um, got it, got it. Okay, I want to go. I think it's cool. I want to check it out.
Yes, you're welcome to come down and check us out.
Heck yeah, great. Anything else that sets you guys apart that you want to get out there to the world, that makes studying advertising PR at University of Tampa amazing? And then I want to kick it to your story.
Yeah, I think one thing that is a great aspect is that in the Department of Communication, we have four programs, like I said before. We have
Mm.
advertising and public relations as one. Then we have communication and media studies. Then we have a journalism degree. And then we finally have communication and speech studies. And a lot of the core requirements and electives kind of cross over across the different majors. Um, so something that I always tell the students that I have is plan your courses carefully because you can come out of here with 2 degrees instead of just one in the 4 years. And so a lot of students will double major. So I have students that are an advertising and public relations major, but they also have a major in speech studies. So they're going out to apply for jobs and they can say, wow, this person can advertise and do public relations, but they can also present really well.
Hey, you get a double major.
Yeah, in 4 years too. So I think it's something that's really great.
That is interesting. On the hiring side, I'm already going to be impressed. If you're a double major and you can speak to how that double major especially benefits you in the specific role that you're looking for, then to me it shows that you have work ethic, you're smart, you're strategic, and you're planning. That alone is going to set you apart if you have a double major. It's not a make or break, because then if you go, I don't know, I just did it and I don't know how it's going to help me, I just did it because somebody told me to, then I'm going to be like, okay, now the narrative's off and it doesn't help you. So speaking towards that effectively, having that speech, let's say you want to be an account executive, you understand advertising principles, and now I know that you can lead a presentation and you understand audience analysis and delivering messages. That's going to make a really compelling argument for an assistant account executive at an agency for sure.
Yeah, definitely will set you apart. I always tell the students, what is it? Because everybody that's applying is your competition. You have a lot of people that are graduating every semester. So everybody that's graduating is your direct competition for these jobs.
Oh yeah.
So what is it that you can do that'll set yourself apart?
I heard a stat actually on a podcast recently. I don't know if it's true, but it was like only like 27% of people actually work in the realm that their major was in.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that, people falling into just whatever role comes up.
And I get it. I get the economy can be bad, and the first job doesn't really define you. Like, you will
Yeah.
hop around most likely, and that's perfectly fine as long as you get to, I mean, if you pick this route as study and you're passionate about advertising, you might have to do marketing or sales for your first job. That's not perfect, and that's perfectly fine. Economies can be bad, but as long as you can get to the core of what you want to do in a couple of years after you graduate, I think that's a great goal.
Yeah, I had a great manager one time, and she told me the job that you have is not your forever job, but it prepares you for your next job.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you always want to do a great job because it carries with you, right? Your work
Yeah.
ethic, for sure. So what was your first job? Where you studied at Florida Atlantic.
Yes.
You didn't go right into higher education, I don't believe, or like you didn't go your PhD route direct after. You worked in the in industry before you got into academia. So let's talk about that. What'd you break into? What was that experience like? Where'd you land? How'd that go?
Yeah, my career path was anything but linear. I think
Mm-hmm.
it looks like a really scribbled line. My first job really, um, well, we'll go back a little bit. I was a pharmacy tech, and then I had gotten a job at Aetna's mail order pharmacy. And so having the experience with, I've always loved computers, and so being very good with the Excel, which I will also give that tip, is be proficient in Microsoft Office, especially with Excel, because it really will make you stand out when you're proficient in these things.
You're gonna need it. Everybody's gonna
Yeah.
need it. Unless you're like copywriter, art director, but you still should know. But yeah, basically every other role in advertising is gonna need it. Google Sheets,
Yep.
Microsoft. Um, Definitely. I agree. So you were good at that. What'd you do?
Yeah, and so after a year of doing that and like jumping into volunteering for every potential like, just extra work that I could do, they gave me a promotion and I jumped into a data analyst role. And so there I was just doing operations planning. And then at that point, I transitioned from doing general business and operations planning to marketing. So there was a job that I saw in Philly during the amazing recession of 2010s, and then I made my transition from analytics of the operations side to marketing.
And where was the marketing job at?
That was at Cigna in Philadelphia.
Got it. Got it. And you fell in love with it? What was going
Yeah,
on
well,
there?
I've always loved data, and so I've loved marketing and advertising, and I love data. And this way, was able to dive into raw data and identify segments that we weren't communicating to, so we could increase market penetration. So this is where we were trying to get Cigna customers to use the mail order pharmacy. So it was had a great time there with some really great employees or great coworkers.
How many spreadsheets did you comb through? Conditioning, heat map analysis, pivot tables.
Pivot table is my favorite.
Mm,
I don't even have a number for that.
too high.
Yeah,
So I could see how they would want to hire you for that type of marketing data analysis role, right? Because you had that background. But you probably communicated that you could file through the data and come up with some insights about these different target segments and coming to conclusions, right? It's not enough just to be able to organize, comb through, but you got to be able to find the nuggets of key insights and actually putting that into a presentation or a deck to showcase, okay, these are the actual people, these are the caregivers, these are the young millennials that are taking care, like here's their consumer journey, this is what they go through, this is when they're looking at their email. Getting granular with the data is it's not easy for a lot of people, so the fact that you can tell those stories is super important.
yeah. You hit the word I was about to jump on is how do you tell a story with data? So there's a lot of it's not everybody is data savvy, and I get that. And so most people in leadership roles aren't data savvy, but they want you to be able to tell them what you found in the data in a way that's meaningful but succinct. Like they don't have the time to listen to everything that you did to massage and get the data to where you need it to be. They just want to know what the insight is so they can make that decision at that point.
Succinct is so important, and in a way that we're kind of always doing that in business and in marketing, in advertising. You're going to be doing research, you're going to be coming up with ideas. What the research might not be massive Excel sheets, it might be interviews, it might be Google searches, it might be articles that you're looking through. You still have to come up with succinct conclusions that make sense and why in any discipline, really. So the
Yeah.
fact, I think that's a really good lesson, like that's really practical, explaining to your manager, to your associate creative director, of why you came to that solution is so important. That story that you got to and why it makes sense. Selling the creative idea for sure on the creative agency side is so important. So how long did you stick with it? What was your game plan? When did you decide to go higher education?
So I was in this data world for, if I count my business planning days, I'd say probably about 7 or so years, something around that time.
Okay.
But when I was working, well, I had one of my friends who came to me one day and he said, "I think you really have a good temperament to teach." He was teaching at the time, Chris Gurry, amazing guy. And so I said, I'll try that out. And he walked me through how I could apply as an adjunct. So I applied for some adjunct roles, sent some emails out, and then I was driving to work one day, got a call from a number I didn't recognize, and they said, "Hey, we got your email. We really need somebody to fill in for this class. We had somebody drop at the last minute. Would you be interested in teaching?"
Okay, where was that at?
This was at Montgomery County Community College up in
There we
Philadelphia.
go.
Yeah,
There we go. So what were you teaching there?
that was I was teaching intro to public speaking class.
There we go. And
Yeah,
that's what got you, and you caught the itch, it
I
seems
got
like,
the
right?
itch. Well, I think I had always had some sort of an itch for it, but I just never went about it. Once you get on that paycheck treadmill, it's kind of hard to, like, how do I go back and do a PhD when I'm making decent money?
Yeah. So walk us through that, right? Because you were probably pretty cushioned up and you were probably
Yeah.
doing pretty well and you got into a rhythm, 7 years all at Cigna, or did you bounce around?
No, I bounced around. I worked at the parent company for uh, Lane Bryant, so it was called Ascena.
Okay. So you're working at
It's
some large
Yeah,
corporations, big revenue sheets, and you're probably making a pretty good salary, and you probably got 9 to 5, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less every couple weeks. So you're probably feeling good. How do you? This teaching bug maybe was predisposed, but you got it. So
I
then, how
got
do you
it.
make that? How do you make that switch? Drop pretty much. I don't know. Do you drop everything and just go a PhD route, and get like a little bit of money, and kind of like tap into your savings that you accumulated? And I guess what's the mental process like?
Have you been spying on me? I think you kind of touched on a lot of it. So yeah, this was at my last job where I was working for Comcast doing advertising there. And then I think just one day I kept thinking about, for some reason that day, just the PhD was really nagging at me. I think I looked around and I looked around the office and then I looked inward and I said, where do I want to be and what do I want to be doing, 20 years from now? Where would I be happier? And I think at that point I just decided to eject. And so I made it a mission to apply to a bunch of schools that had great communication programs. Because in most schools, they don't have their own, like, there's not a uniquely identified advertising degree, but most communication programs have advertising sitting under it. So I applied, sent out a bunch of applications, and then it was just radio silence for a long time. So I had quit my job at that point because I thought something was going to happen because I was waiting for some response.
Do you regret that?
Do I regret it? No, because it gave me more time. It kind of, I think,
made it real.
It made it real, and it also made me commit to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary, though. I mean, everybody says you shouldn't quit a job until you have the next one lined up or next opportunity lined up. In the case for you, it would have been a PhD program, right? But I mean, they're going to want you, right? Most of these PhD programs, for the most part, like, did you get denied at some of these places? I mean, like,
I got denied from a couple.
Sure.
Yeah, some were a pipe dream, right?
Yeah.
But
they had to have advertising specifically, or just comms?
Right. They were communication, yeah. And so I had thought about it for a while, and I hadn't heard back from the ones that I really wanted. And so at this point, I started applying for jobs. I said, well, I got to get some sort of income. If this isn't going to happen, then this was a sign I need to go back. And so I applied for jobs. This job came up with the company with a better salary than I had before.
Oh, nice.
And went through the whole fingerprinting and background check and all that good stuff.
Fingerprinting.
Wow. Yes, fingerprinting. My life of crime was over.
Yeah. So you passed the fingerprint. You got the job. Did you get the job?
I got the job. It was done. I was supposed to start on a Monday, and on a Wednesday afternoon, I get an email from Florida State saying, "Congratulations, you've been accepted. We need your acceptance to move forward with the process." And so I'm supposed to start a job on Monday, and I get an email on the Wednesday before saying, "Hey, we want you to start the PhD."
Got it. That's a tough decision. And how do you tell your loved ones, like, this is happening? I don't know what to do. I'm sure there's pressures. Make money. Stick to the comfort. 9 to 5. We need insurance. Like, I don't know if schools cover that. We don't have to get that granular, but there's a lot of pressure, right? Like, from a third party perspective, I feel like the general consensus might say keep on going with that high paying job and just keep climbing up the ladder of corporate success.
Yeah, that was the dilemma. Do I get the high paying job, or do I dig myself into some student loan debt because those grad stipends don't cover enough? So talked it through with my mom and talked it through with one of my old teachers, one of my old professors, and I said, this is where I am. And then it was kind of a, flip the coin, and then which side do you wish it landed on? And so it was the PhD, obviously. We all know how the story ended.
You flip a coin, right? And then when it's in the air,
Yeah.
Like, I hope it lands on, and then you can just grab the coin out of the air and just do that roll. I like that thinking. So you went with it and it went well. So that's a really, I love that story, right? And then, so then from there, the career track then goes, okay, you're doing this, you're doing the PhD with the intent that you are going to teach for a living. This is your career now. You're going to teach full time on a college campus. So you're at Florida State. You do that for a couple of years, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. And so I was also got caught up in the middle of it was COVID, right?
Yeah, that thing happened.
Yeah,
it's still happening.
The thing that was supposed to last for 2 weeks.
So you got caught that kind of. So then from there, and we can spare that. Then how do you pick out the school that you want to teach at? Like, you want to stay in Florida, you're publishing, you're doing your thing, you're working on your dissertation. how do you figure out what school that you want to like? Is it just whoever is opening when you just gotta get a teaching job, or like do you
Yeah, well,
network
I needed
throughout
a.
that?
I wasn't sure how it was going to play out. So my mom lives in Tampa, and so I was, when I was, COVID was happening, so everything was shut down, and so my lease was coming up for renewal at Florida State. But at that point, everything had been moved to online, so I didn't need to be paying overhead doing my doctorate. So I talked to my mom, and she's like, "Yeah, just come down here."
Mhm.
And so I'm in Tampa, and then I get somebody reaches out from Tampa and says, "Hey, we have this visiting line open. Would you be interested in it?" And so I said, "Oh, look, an actual teaching job."
Yep.
So, and I don't know how familiar you are with the different like teaching levels or titles. So a visiting line is usually for just a temporary period of time.
Hmm.
So I interviewed, and it worked out that I got the position to start the following academic year. So I was able to forfeit my assistantship and just pay for 2 credits to stay active while completing my dissertation. And so at that point, I'm also accumulating real teaching experience.
Yeah, you're
Um,
making a really strong case, a resume for yourself,
yeah, and
and
so
something
I'm
opened up. Obviously,
yeah, this is at University of Tampa as a visiting professor, and
Mhm.
so as I was working there, it was just like the most amazing group of people that I've ever worked with. Like these people are welcoming. I'd never worked at a place where people went out of their way to make sure that you had everything you need to be successful. There was no gritty, competitive nature that you get. Probably like some R1 schools can be a little bit like that, but
Yeah,
R2 is it was more like I don't know. Everything was really just about welcoming you into the fold.
yeah.
And so I made it my mission to do a standout job so that way I'd be able to
Stay,
get in the running. Yeah, I wanted to stay. At that point, I was like, I want to stay here. This is where I want to teach.
and then position opened up, and then they hired you full time, or
Yeah, position opened up for tenure track, interviewed for it, and it went well. So here I am rolling into my 4th year at UT.
nice. And that's where we come full circle. And with
Yes.
the last couple of minutes now, I guess like accumulating your professional experience on and your PhD experience, writing the dissertation, uh, and now being in the classroom for 4 years. I guess like what's like let's just rapid fire some of the best advice that what do you tell your students? What have you learned? What do you wish you would have known? As you see these young, bright-eyed, aspiring advertisers, marketers, public relations professionals, what the heck do you tell them? And how do they do this world? Do you want them to all be teachers? You tell me. What's the right way to go?
Well, one, it's never too late to make a change. I did it, way into what I thought was going to be my career forever. So don't feel like you're locked into doing something that you don't want to do for the rest of your life because you don't have to do it if you don't want to.
Love that.
Yeah,
And
if
it's your truth, that's for sure.
yeah.
That's true.
Um, Two is find a way to make yourself stand out. So look at if there's a job that you want, look at the people who are in those positions and try to match those qualifications so you can be in line with what they are. Another thing is if you can, I always recommend grad school, but if you can't, there are other options in addition to a 2-year or a 4-year degree that you can do. So some of the courses that Google has on Coursera for
Yes.
SEO optimization, all of those are fantastic. They pull a lot of weight when you're applying for stuff. It'll
I,
make you unique.
let's hover there. I think
Yeah.
that's really, really smart, right? I think the lesson there is really to always invest in yourself
Mm-hmm.
and to learn and put money back, put time back into who you are and in your future career and your life and your mental health. All these different areas you should be investing in. So for me, when I see students kind of settling for Cutco knives or like insurance sales. Like there's obviously, yes, I understand people are in debt and they need to pay the debt off for sure. But I don't think they should lose sight. And if they have the potential to pause, and if you're in the lucky enough situation where you can go move back home or figure out a way to save money and then go back to and invest in your skills, whether that be your master's that you also teach, I believe, what's it called at U Tampa?
Masters in professional communication.
Boom, shout out there. Or whatever it is, a master's, a 1-year program, or online classes or these academies, these online certificates, learn how to code a little bit. I think that's super, super great, especially when there's economic downturn. We find that people are investing in education. It's a natural route to go when the jobs are not there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's smart. Then you're not sitting around. There's not a gap in your resume. And also you'll be bettering yourself for it. So I love that. And I think that goes on throughout your entire career.
Yeah.
Continuing, like when you have extra time, like what classes, what can you be doing to learn more? It's not like I've made it, I'm done, I can coast ever.
No, I think about that too, because the way that we teach advertising now is not going to be the same we teach it in even 5 years from now is going to be different.
Exactly.
So I had to stay on top of the trends, and I have to see, if I teach people how to advertise the way that we did in the 90s, if we just look at print TV and radio, that's not it.
Well, Sean, I'm glad you don't do that, because there are professors out there in the world that just stick to they're tenured, or they're locked into the system at whatever university or college, and there are people that do that. They just throw the old class, unless it's a history class. There are professors that fail to adapt with the times, and I'm glad to hear that you are reinvigorating your course every semester, every year, to match with the current trends. I think that's so important as well.
Yeah, we've actually made our strategic social media course a new required course for incoming AdPR students. We work with a company that uses a social media simulator, so they can create their posts and schedule based on different metrics that like the prompt has each week. And so they can see if they're scheduling it appropriately, if they're doing the right captions, if they're doing the right hashtags.
What's that called? I want to mess around with that.
Yeah, it's through this company called Stukent, and it's called Mimic. So it mimics what it would be like if you're running social media simulators. So we work through it, and I think it's intimidating at first for the students because they've never done anything like it, because it feels like they're actually at a job, as a prompt with a video, and they're like buying different images and posts.
Hey, I think taking big risks and diving into the work, I think that's great. When you're an undergrad, you should be doing that, and you shouldn't be scared. Like, you be learning and taking big chances like that, especially on portfolio work, every class project. I always encourage people to like really push it and go crazy, right? Even if it is that capstone, yes, the clients are in there, but those clients can't fire you like in that capstone class. They might be able to hire you, so you really want to razzle dazzle them, but that's what they're looking for, is students that are taking big risks, and that's what you are paying to do. College is not cheap, so really push those boundaries, so then your work can actually gather the attention from these big agencies or marketing companies. So I love that, Sean.
Yeah, it's one of the best things. I think students are scared of it at first, but I always get students that look at their individual post performance each week, because it gives them a real like analytics page where it shows where it peaked and the impressions from the post and all that. And then it gives them a little bit of a taste of what it's like to work in data analytics too. And I get a lot of students each semester that are like, I didn't know this was a thing and I want to do this.
I love it, Sean. All right, Sean, how can people reach out to you? I know you got more advice. I know we can talk forever, but I want to make sure that they can learn more about you, more about University of Tampa, and anything else. Like, what's the best route to go? If I'm listening, I want to hang out with you, talk with you. What's the route to go?
Yeah, shoot me an email. Probably the best way to get in touch with these. So it's sawicki@ut.edu. My last name is Sawicki.
Wonderful. Then we'll have people reach out and they can ask you more questions. They might want to transfer over. But Sean, doctor, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the great advice, sharing your story, talking about the school, teaching us that it's never too late to make a change. I think that's a really, really valuable lesson. And that's going to be the soundbite. That's going to be the intro as well. So I appreciate it. And that really resonates with me. And I'm sure with a lot of our listeners. So thank you.
Well, thank you.